here. All right. I'm just going to spotlight myself so that, come back, where is it? All right, good morning everybody and welcome to today's session on the Sales Success Blueprint, mastering the 3 essentials to hitting your sales targets. So today we're going to be focusing on a critical aspect of any business, which is obviously client acquisition, because it's quite simple really. No clients, no sales, no business. And we're going to explore the essential strategies to enhance your sales performance. So I encourage everyone to engage and please use the chat to actively speak. If you're not actively speaking, can you just put yourself on mute, please, so that we don't get a lot of background noise? That'd be fantastic. And let's make this as interactive as possible. Now, I've got a lot to get through, so I'm going to move things along quickly. And with your permission, along the way, I'm going to give you everything that I can. And with your permission, I'm going to show you our system where we could help you accelerate your progress towards the end. A bit of quid pro quo there. We're going to concentrate on principles rather than strategies and tactics, because principles are timeless. Strategies change, tactics change all the time. If you do anything with social media, you know exactly how much it changes constantly. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rashid Kotwal, obviously. I've spent 20 years in IT working for major, mainly US vendors and then consultancy groups. And then for the last 23 years, my partner and wife, Barbara Sauter, up in the corner on my screen, waving. And I have run a practice, Revealed Resources, which specializes in helping business owners and sales teams build financially and emotionally rewarding businesses and get the business to a point where it could ostensibly run without you. And when we work with sales teams, we help sales teams, mainly who sell large complex deals, B2B primarily, close more deals faster with less effort. So let's start with why you're here, okay? So just put a yes in the chat if which one of these you're actually experiencing. So the first one would be variable revenue, unpredictable sales results. If you think in quarters, like a lot of our clients do, revenue can be lumpy. It sort of gets bunched up towards the end of the quarter, where there's spikes and troughs. And there's the problem with that is everybody's competing for that business at the end of the quarter. A lot of us have lots of competition. In fact, if there was no competition, I would suggest that there's no business to be had. So there is always competition no matter what you do. And that says to me that in most cases, the market is pretty saturated with competitors. And, we all essentially offer the same, similar things. Okay, there's very little difference. So that makes it really hard to stand out and become noticed in what you're doing. Which then means that it's quite difficult to get attention because there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of stuff coming at us. Every time I go to a website, I then start seeing ads from whatever that was. And I'm going, I'm really not that interested. Why are you wasting your money on ads with me? But anyway, so cutting through becomes really, really, really difficult. All of that leads to a price-driven market where very often your consumers, your prospects, your clients start focusing on price rather than the value of your offering. And then what happens very often is that people start price discounting, which frankly is a race to the bottom. That's just an absolute race to the bottom. And then the last one that we see a lot, especially in an economy that we're supposedly facing, which to a lot of people is difficult, is prospects may show interest, but they hesitate to commit. That leads to longer sales cycles, very often no decision, or people simply ghost you. Yeah, you send stuff out, you think they're hot to trot, and then absolutely nothing, and then you get into this follow-up cycle, which really is a no-win game. No-win game for anybody. So just let me know. Put a hand up, whatever. How many of those things are you actually facing? Yes, and yes. All right, so what do we really want? We're in business ultimately to make money and to have a good lifestyle. They should be balanced, because no one really wants to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week or 100 hours a week. And so we want a steady influx of leads. We want profitable long-term clients, and we want referrals from those lovely clients. And that leads, so that's on a logical level. But on an emotional level, we want less stress generally. We want to have confidence that we're going to meet our sales targets. We want to feel that we're really delivering for our clients, because ultimately, I would suggest that most of us in this room are technically based in some form. Now, when I say technically, that means we could be financial planners, we could be accountants, we could be lawyers, we could be IT people, but it's some form of technical consultancy that we provide. Even there might be a product behind it, there is a lot of technical consultancy. So delivery is a great strategy, because the better you deliver, the more repeat business you're going to get, and the more likely it is that somebody is actually going to refer you on. So let's talk about a couple of, let me just make this chat a bit bigger. Hang on, where's the mouse gone? Yeah. So let's talk about a couple of major shifts that we've seen over the years in B2B sales. Now, I'm of the vintage of, nobody ever said no to IBM. And, IBM was the bee's knees, and everybody, they would go to the board and that would be it. The decision would filter down. And I actually know people where this has happened. So, but today's world, that has shifted tremendously. People today are looking to deal with business experts. So if whatever field you're in, your prospects and your clients want you to be a business expert, and they then expect you to have a very deep understanding of their issues, their priorities, and to be able to then provide insights and recommendations as to how they could improve performance. So effectively, you need to be a trusted advisor to those clients, and you do that by deepening your knowledge and then sharing that knowledge freely. Now, I often have people say, well, if I give away everything, why would they come to me? But that's actually, there's a bit of irony in that, because actually if you give away knowledge, you tell people what to do. You don't necessarily tell them how to do it. You tell them what they need to do. And they get a sense that you understand them and their issues. And the better people feel that you can understand them and their issues, the more likely they are to feel a sense of trust with you. So that's why you need to really develop that sense of trust. The other thing is, there's very rarely a single decision maker. There may be one person who has the final imprimatur, but it's very rare that there will be one single decision maker. In most cases, there will be multiple people, multiple stakeholders, there will be influencers. So generally what happens is a lot of people can say no, whereas only one person might give the final yes. And for that reason, you need to understand all of the people involved, who's who in the zoo. You need to be able to network, navigate, and negotiate with all the various groups and subgroups, and even the individuals concerned, so that you can figure out what their personal agendas are. Because you can put a business case to somebody or an organization, but people buy from people. And very often a personal agenda where it's not in the best interest of the individual buyer, they will kibosh the sale. And I'll give you some examples a bit later. The other thing is, you cannot control when somebody is going to buy, no matter what we think. We can't control it, okay? But you can control your communication to them. So when we work with clients, we work on the 90-day rule. And I'll go into the 90-day rule a bit later, but the 90-day rule says that you must communicate at least once every 90 days with someone. Otherwise, they will forget who you even exist should somebody else come along with a product that they could use that you could have provided. They will literally forget about you on day 91. So you need to have, given all of this, you need to have a predictable system that attracts, engages, converts, and retains high-value clients. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's talk about your market. If we look at this pie chart, and we look, it's broken up into a whole bunch of segments. And the smallest segment, interestingly, is the 3% that are ready to buy. Now, think about how you go about buying anything. The chances are that you are going to go and do your research. You're going to look at websites. You're going to look at testimonials, reviews. You're going to ask your peers before you make a decision. And that doesn't matter whether it's something relatively inexpensive all the way to something that's really expensive and really complex. And when you're dealing with senior decision makers, we know statistically these days, because there are a lot of surveys done of these sorts of people, where they are 60 or 70 or even 80% down the buying funnel. They've done a whole bunch of research before they even want to talk to a vendor. They don't want to talk to a salesperson until they've done that research. And that's why you really need to have a mechanism that puts yourself out there so that you are top of mind when they're looking. So they need to be able to find you. You need to then educate them. You need to then nurture them. You need to then give them information as to why they should consider you over all of the other people in your market. Now, if you look at the next bunch, there's 7% thereabouts open to a conversation. So you've got the people who are ready to buy, they're doing their research. You've got the 7% open to a conversation. They may not be actively researching, which is why you still need to get in front of them. So one of the issues that we see is a lot of people get stuck in marketing and they think that marketing is the be-all and end-all. But ultimately, you need to be able to reach out to people who could be in your target market. They could be open to a conversation if you can explain to them and show them that you understand their priorities, what could be happening in their business, why they should possibly give you a hearing. And then there are the next 30% who know they have an issue. They're not actively looking yet, but they won't take action unless somebody reaches out and speaks to them. And that's the whole purpose of both marketing as well as prospecting. And then you've got the niggling people. They don't know why they're stuck. They may be doing some research and then they might just hit upon you. Okay, but all of these cases, you need to have a marketing system and you need to have a prospecting system. And a prospecting system is a way of reaching out to these people so that you can say, hey, listen, I'm here. Maybe you have this particular issue, maybe you don't. So we've been running this practice for 23 years. The majority of our business comes from two places. One is the marketing side, and that is through things like LinkedIn. We put out a lot of content. We educate a lot of people. The second corollary to that is really networking, but the real business comes from direct outreach, where we might find somebody on LinkedIn. We will then reach out, or I will then reach out to them in some form. Generally speaking, it's a phone call. Because what I've noticed is we can all get sort of stuck behind email and LinkedIn messages and whatever. And what's fascinating is when I actually phone somebody and I go back in my CRM, my customer relationship management system, and I have a look and I said, actually, I've sent all these people emails a year ago, 2 years ago sometimes, and nothing ever happened. Or even LinkedIn messages and nothing ever happened. But it's the phone call that triggers things. And then once the phone call happens, people get a sense of who you are. And then down the track, some people will just call up and say, hey, listen, I've seen your stuff. I'm interested in doing something with you. But nothing happens until you actually reach out and talk to somebody. So given all of that, you need a system to target the different phases of the buying cycle. Now, one of the principal questions that we all have when somebody is reaching out to us is relevance. So they're all asking, why is this? Why is this relevant to me? Why should I even care? Why should I care about this now? And why should I care about working with you? So when we look at this diagram, everything in this diagram effectively revolves around positioning. Oops, go back. Around positioning over there. Because people who know they have an issue and are actively looking for that solution will often extensively search and ask for recommendations. And as I said, they can be 60 or 70% down the buying funnel before they come and talk to you. So the better you position yourself as a leader in your field, the better you build a level of trust. And the easier then it becomes to make a sale. So with the content that we produce, we have a number of free white papers and other giveaways that we give. And I remember over the years, people would turn up when we actually had more physical meetings, and they would have printed out this 50-page document, and they would have circled different aspects of it. And they'd already made the decision, and this is the first meeting, by the way, they'd already made the decision that they were going to become a client because of the information that I'd already given them and the way I had educated them in the first place. So that comes down to how you've positioned yourself. So if we look at positioning, what supports positioning? Marketing is the thing that supports your positioning in the first place. Because marketing to us is not about your traditional brand and image. There is a place for traditional brand and image, but really that's for the Coca-Colas of this world. For the size of our sorts of companies, marketing is really more about direct outreach and helping our clients, educate our clients as to why they should work with us. Now, marketing supports the prospecting, and it also supports the selling, because it educates your buyers as to what they should be looking for in a solution, and it then nurtures the prospects along the way. And the nurture is a really important component of this, because when somebody comes along, one of the first things you want to do is to basically engage them, and you want to educate them, because that can be done asynchronously. That means that can be a one-to-many. So you're not talking to every particular person. You're going, okay, I've got a lot of content. I can send out a lot of emails. You can be on my newsletter list. I'll constantly be in front of you without having to have a one-on-one interaction with you. But at some point, you need to prospect. It's once you've got someone on your list through your marketing and you're engaging with them, it is really useful to reach out to them directly. Now, you can do that in a number of different ways. You can send them a direct email because you know they're on your list, or you can send them a direct message. But to me, the preferable way is to actually pick up the phone and understand that not everybody is going to answer the phone the first time. So you send them, you pick up the phone, you send an SMS, you phone them a couple of times. In fact, these days, statistically, I think it takes about 11 phone call touches before somebody will pick up the phone. Now, that's statistically. What I find is very often, very often people will pick up the phone, and then you just start a conversation with them. And then you take it from there, wherever that is. Yeah. So the biggest issue that I find with organizations is that they concentrate on marketing, and they do very little prospecting. And because they do very little prospecting, they hardly ever qualify clients, and then they don't have very many sales meetings. So that's the key of doing all that. Let me get rid of that. So when you get to the realm of sales, you have prospected somebody, you've qualified them in or out, and this is really key. Because you want to spend people who are likely to buy. And it takes the same amount of effort to sell a really big deal than it takes to sell a really small deal. So where would you want to spend your time? So it's really critical that you look at where you're spending your time with people who are likely to buy. Now, that's not to say that they're going to buy today. And if they're not going to buy today, what happens is you need to go back to engaging them through your marketing system. So there will be people who are ready to buy right now. They may not be ready to, and there will be people who are not ready to buy right now. Okay? The ones who are ready to buy, fantastic. You want to get a commitment from them, let's go. The ones who are not ready to buy, you need to go back to an engagement model where they will sit there being fed stuff until they are ready to buy. So over the 20-something years we've been doing this, the biggest issue that we found is that people don't actually have a system to do all of these things. They only do this, Some people only do this, some people only market, some people only prospect, or some people go out and try and sell without doing any of the prospecting and qualification. And that's when you waste a heck of a lot of time. So the next question is, what actually differentiates you? So we talked about the fact that we've all got competition. So every one of us in our businesses has expertise and experience. And it's got to be a given that we have expertise and experience. But it's also a given that every one of your competitors is going to have that. So what is it that actually differentiates you from everybody else? So ultimately, people buy from people. And they buy from people that they vibe with, that they feel a level of trust with, that they can start having a relationship with. And it's that combination of your expertise, your experience, and who you are as a person that makes you unique. Because generally speaking, all other things being equal, we will buy from people we know, like, and trust. Now, interestingly enough, we don't have to like them, but we do have to trust them. We do have to trust that they're going to deliver. And that comes down to who you are as a person, and it also comes down to your reputation as an organization. So if there's one thing I would say about brand, it's the reputation of the brand. We don't, if you're going to buy a mobile phone, let's just say you're going to buy a Samsung or an iPhone, you're not buying from that individual salesperson. You're buying from Apple or Samsung, which is the brand that's represented. But for most of our businesses, you are buying from a person. If that person doesn't vibe with you, you are much less likely to buy. So when we work with our clients, we help them figure out what this combination of expertise, experience, and essence is, so that they can have a really good connection with their clients. They can have the expertise and the experience gives them conviction, because the first sale is always to yourself. So that how do you know that you're really good at what you do? But your experience in essence gives a level of compassion and empathy to your prospective clients. And we help people figure out what this unique combination is for them and how they can go to market. And one of the ways we do this is through what I call a client interview value gap analysis methodology, where we actually interview our clients. So sometimes they're past clients, sometimes they're current clients, and actually look at what they're doing really well, what they could do better, and also look for opportunities where they haven't thought of selling something. And we've been doing this ever since we started. And I remember the first one we did where the company was putting together a major system for a multinational, and they knew there were problems, but they weren't sure what the problems were. And so I rang a number of sales directors and senior executives of the target company and interviewed them. And we found the issues. We found all the various issues that were up. Now, what was really interesting out of all of this was the target company really appreciated the fact that their vendor had taken the trouble to ask them. Because everybody knew there were problems, but nobody wanted to actually pick up the phone and ask. Because there's often this hesitation. Oh, I don't want to know the bad news. Well, I tell you what, you want to know the bad news, but you also want to know the good news. And what was interesting, because of this, the system was fixed. Our client sent me a testimonial saying, mate, you saved our business, because we would have gone down the tube if we hadn't actually done this. Now, that was years ago. Quite recently, though, I spoke to another client, and he is an engineering consultancy who does very, very specialized engineering. And he consults to larger design companies, engineering companies, who then work with end developers. And I said, okay, so, why do you use him? Look, he does a very specialist thing, but we're also looking at doing some of this in-house, because we don't want to give work to somebody else and then have that person recharge the end client. So I said, that's interesting. So what would happen if my client whitelisted the service that he actually provided, so that you could then send it directly to your client, as in the developer. And Barbara, so you wanted that? Yeah. You can send it directly to the end client and put your markup on. They said, fantastic, we'll do that. So I said, how much business are you actually giving him now? And they said, oh, look, about 10% of the deals that come through. And I said, okay, if we made this difference, how much would you give him? Oh, we'd give him about 80 to 90%. I went, wow, okay. Rang the next one. Put the same thing to them. They said, yep, we do something similar. Rang the next one. Something similar. 3's a pattern, guys. So I went back to client immediately after the first one, and I said, hey, this is what you need to do. So just by making those phone calls and having a third party, now this is really critical. You need to have a third party ask, because people will tell a third party the truth that they will not necessarily tell you as the vendor asking, because people don't want to hurt your feelings, but they will tell somebody else. So that is a service that we provide both as a standalone as well as part of our bigger programs. So whenever we work with people on a bigger program, that's one of the first things we do, because we want to know what is actually happening, because we want to be able to get to your experience, your essence, expertise, experience in essence. So if we move forward, let's look at the demand triangle, what we call the demand triangle, because this is the fundamental of every business and how every business operates from a marketing, sales, and delivery point of view. So to be viable in any business, you need to have a message that resonates. And you need to understand what the problems are and the outcomes, the problems your clients are facing and the outcomes that they're looking for. And you have to really narrow this down so that you can be really specific and understand the priorities that any particular organization is likely to be having and what they're going to be looking for. Now, interestingly enough, problems come in two forms. They come as logical problems, and they come as emotional problems. And same thing goes for the outcomes. So logical problems means something like, okay, I want to say I'm saving money. I want to save money. I want to save time. I want to get more efficient. I want to get more effective. I want to increase my productivity. Those are all logical outcomes that can be quantifiable. Emotional problems are what is the emotion related to this particular problem. If I don't have enough money, I'm stressed. If I'm not efficient and effective, I might be losing clients, which causes me stress. It causes me headaches. What are the things that are causing me headaches on an emotional level? And what are the opposites that come down to the outcomes that I actually want? And the better you can get at articulating the very specific problems and outcomes that your particular clients want, the more successful you will be. Now, that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is who's your market. Now, the interesting thing with market is a lot of people say, well, everybody's my market. Now, the reality is everybody can't be your market, because you'd run out of, you wouldn't be able to address them anyway, okay? And none of us are actually in the mass market business. So you need to be able to identify exactly who your market is from a demographic point of view. Now, a demographic point of view is all of the physical things that you can determine, like size, location, industry, even the person, the role of the person and the organization that you're targeting. The psychographic is how they think. What are their values and beliefs? How do they go to market? How do they actually think about the service that they provide? And it's important to know both. Oops. And down the bottom is traffic and conversion. Now, it's all very well to say that I want to go for a particular market. But how do you actually get your message in front of them? How are they actually looking for what you provide? And if they're not looking for what you provide, how do you actually get in front of them? Are they on LinkedIn? Because not everybody is. Not everybody is on LinkedIn, much as you might think they are. Are they on Facebook, depending on what industry, who you're targeting? How do you find them? Are there lists available somewhere that you can buy or rent that would give you access to these people? Because you have to know what your cost of conversion is going to be. How much can you actually spend to acquire a client? But the real key is conversion. Because conversion is where the rubber hits the road. You can get as many leads as you like, but if you can't actually convert them into profitable clients, then you're wasting money getting the leads. And it's really interesting because I often work with lead generation companies who do pure lead generation. So they will either prospect or they will do all of those sorts of things for you, and they will provide leads to their client. And then the client says, well, none of these leads are any good. A lead generation company goes back and says, well, did you actually call them? No. And it's surprising how much money gets wasted because people actually don't focus on conversion and looking at what you need to improve that, because that is where the greatest leverage comes. So that's when we're working with somebody, we say, okay, if your conversion rate is 20, 30%, let's get that up first. And then let's look at getting more leads in, not the other way around. But if your conversion rate is 60, 70, 80%, I'd say you're probably not getting enough leads because nobody converts 80 to 90% under normal circumstances. Unless it was some sort of life-threatening illness and you were the only specialist in town, nobody is going to convert like that. So it really comes down to where you're putting your focus, and that's something that we really look into. So given this, when we come back to our system of marketing, prospecting, and selling, we work with our clients on a particular system which we call the revenue growth intensive. And some of the stuff we do here, we do a range of stuff, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of it. We start by drilling down into your value proposition. What are the actual problems that you're actually solving, and what are the outcomes that you're getting? What is your experience, your expertise, and your essence? We then look at pinpointing who your ideal clients are. Who is your market? What is your market? Where are they? How do you actually get in front of them? We look at your authority positioning. How do you actually position yourself as the go-to leader in your field? What content do you need to put out? How do you need to do this? What channels do you need to use? And we also create visual models because a picture paints 1,000 words. So we actually create visual models that do a couple of things. One is they explain a journey that the customer is going to go on, and they also explain what it is that we do. So if we look at this particular model here, there are actually a whole bunch of things that go on the outside, which I haven't put in there because that would just add to a lot of complexity that we don't need right at the moment. So there's a whole framework that we put in place to help you create more business. So any questions with any of this? Anyone? Yeah, you got something? No? Speak now. Okay. All right, let's talk the realm of sales conversations. So when you're having a sales conversation, you need to understand your prospects. And your prospects are going, why should I listen to you? What are the top 3 to 5 issues that they're facing that if you highlighted those, they would think, this is really interesting. This is something that I need to talk about. Okay? So unless you can articulate a reason for relevance that they would listen to you, they're not going to listen. The second quadrant is, what's your solution? What's the overall concept of your solution? How does it fit into the client's context? What are the high-level modules that you're going to offer? And when should you speak about this? And then, of course, how is it delivered? And then what are the outcomes that they're looking for? Now, this is where it gets really interesting. So this model actually came from a woman called Bernice McCarthy, who in the early 1980s created a system for interestingly enough, adult education, how people actually process information. And what Bernice McCarthy said, that we all process information in these 4 quadrants, but we have preferences. So there are percentages of the population, about 25%, who would say, if I don't know the reason for listening, I will simply switch off. There's a percentage of the population that goes, yes, I really want the information. Another percentage of the population, about 30%, that says, how is it delivered? And then there are the real entrepreneurs of the world who are going, okay, you've given me all of this, how else can I use it? But in a sales context, it is really important to realize where you should be focusing your time. And we say to people that you need to be focusing your time in a couple of areas. One is the why, and the second one is the what if. Do not go into the what and the how initially. There will be a time that you need to go into it, but not initially. So when you're prospecting, when you're writing your marketing material, you need to be talking about the problems that they're facing and the outcomes that they could be looking for. So we have this analogy that I use, and I call it the naked salesperson. The naked salesperson goes into a meeting with nothing. No laptop, no PowerPoint, no brochures, no demonstration. They go in there to simply sit there and listen to what the client has to say, to talk about the issues that the client might be facing, to give them insights, and to move the conversation along. Which is an anathema to most technically based people, because as technically based people, we tend to be really into the how, into the what and the how. That's where we want to focus. But what happens is that if you give people a whole bunch of solution without any context, they have no idea why they should even be listening, and it will simply turn them off. The other danger is, if you're talking to another highly technical people, you could start going down rat holes with your solution rather than taking it up a couple of levels to here, which is the why and the what if, as to why they should actually be buying. Now, if you're dealing with a senior executive, trust me, they're not concerned about the what and the how. They're only concerned about a business case. So what is the business case? And the business case only comes from here and here. Why should they listen, and what are the outcomes? And when you're putting a business case together, you need to work with them, and you need to understand what the ROI is for them specifically. You cannot go in there and say, when we work with Joe, Fred, and Sally, the ROI was this. No, I want to know what the ROI is for me, and that's what you need to focus on. And yes, at some point, people will want to know what your solution is and how is it delivered, but not in the beginning. So this is a really critical point, because everybody is asking, why now? What's in it for me? What's in it for now? And why should I be doing this? So you need to stay above the line, not below the line. Now, everybody also is motivated by one of a number of different things, both logical and emotional. So we're motivated by money, time, status and recognition and risk, well-being and energy. So when you think about logical reasons for doing something are money and time. I want to make more money. I want to save money. I want to get more efficient because that saves me time. I want to buy myself time for something else. But the key factor, especially in corporate sales or larger, and it doesn't have to be corporate sales, it can be any sort of sale where there are multiple stakeholders involved, where some of the stakeholders don't actually own the business. And this is key. Status and risk and loss of reputation can be one of the biggest deal killers, because nobody wants to feel that they're left holding the baby if this thing didn't work. So what is the risk to me personally? It may be good for the company, but what is the risk for me personally if it doesn't work? Or what is the risk if I'm shown up as not being that good? So I have one interesting example. I've got a number of examples, but I'll just talk about one. All right. So a client and good friend of ours, John, he is a manufacturing consultant. He goes out to manufacturing plants, mainly in the food industry, And he looks at how to improve efficiency by putting in monitoring systems and rejigging the whole thing. And he told me that a number of occasions he's had where he's gone in, the business itself recognizes and the business owners recognize that this thing would be a really good thing to put in, it's really necessary, etc. But the deal gets kiboshed because a production manager stands to lose something. And in one particular case, the production manager was going to be shown up. This particular person used to go on junkets around the world. He would lose out to this because he wouldn't be able to go, and he kiboshed the deal. It happens more often than we care to admit. So it's really critical that you understand who all the stakeholders are, who all the influencers are, and be able to cover off their personal agendas as well as the business case. Because if you don't do that, you're on hiding to nothing. And the other interesting example is I worked with a client, and they do refurbishments for large hospitals. And they'd done a number of refurbishments for a particular group, and over the years, and this group knew them. They knew them really well. They knew exactly who the players were. The players knew them, and they were bidding for another group, for another location. Same group, another location. And I said, "Who's on the selection panel?" And they said, three of the people they knew really well. One person was the local bean counter, and they didn't know him. And I said, "Okay, what do you know about him?" "Oh, not much." I said, "Look, what I would strongly suggest you do is go and sit down with this person, go through your bid line by line, and explain the value." Suffice to say, they didn't. They thought that it was in the bag, and they lost the deal. And they told me afterwards that the deal was about $5 million worth of refurbishment. So it's really, really, really important that you talk to everybody involved in the decision. So with every sales meeting that you have, whether it's a prospecting meeting or a sales meeting, doesn't matter, it's a meeting. It's a physical, synchronous meeting. You want to do one of three outcomes if possible. That's not always possible, but if possible, one of three outcomes. You want to go for a contact. That means, is there somebody else in the business that I need to be talking to? You need to go for another calendar appointment. What is the next step? Should we have another meeting? Let's put it in the diary. We can always move it, but let's put it in the diary. And is there a commitment for cash? Now, in some cases, it might be a credit card, might be a purchase order, it might be an agreement that gets signed. But you're really looking for one of those three outcomes. So when we work with our clients, we, as part of the Revenue Growth Intensive, we actually frame and lead sales conversations. We teach people how to do that more effectively. Because remember, we all buy from people. And prospects are looking for leadership. They don't want you to sit there asking questions. They don't want you to sit there chewing the fat. They want to be told what to do at a certain point. If you're not doing that, you are not doing your job. And I learned this a very long time ago in my first sales role, where I had a number of meetings with this particular leadership team. And then finally the head guy turned around and he said, "Rashid, we've had a lot of meetings. Tell us what to do. Just tell us." And I went, okay. So this is where you need to be the trusted advisor. You have to give sound advice. We teach people how to deal with multiple stakeholders, how to network, navigate, and negotiate your way around the organization, how to handle objections, how to negotiate, how to do demonstrations and trials. One of the biggest issues we see with demonstrations and trials is everybody vomits all over the prospect. The prospect doesn't care about everything that you can do. They care about very specific things. And you need to know what those things are so that you can just talk about those things and not all the rest of the stuff that you can do. Because the more you put to people, the more confused they get. And then we also teach you how to write effective proposals. And Handy on the call over here, I'll just call him out, because one of the things that we were doing with him was how to actually rejig the proposal so that the proposal was more effective. And the very fact that you never send a proposal, you always talk somebody through it, because what's the first thing you do when you get a proposal? You look at the price. Okay? You don't look at what's in the proposal and why it's there. And we also teach people how to sell on a virtual system like Zoom or Teams, which is actually very, very different to how you would do it face to face. There's been some interesting a couple of interesting studies recently where they actually show that people face to face, there is a different level of connection than on a Zoom screen or a Teams screen or any sort of virtual screen. It's like mirror neurons go backwards and forwards. So always remember, people buy when they're ready to buy, not when you need to make a sale. And your job is to keep in front of them. So this is a thing put up by Microsoft a few years ago, and it's still absolutely valid today. So if we look at salespeople, most salespeople, believe it or not, give up after the first contact. Some will ring the second time, some will ring the third time, maybe some will ring the fourth time. But if you look where the sales are actually made, it's actually back here somewhere, around here to here. And I can tell you that this is played out over the years for us. And I distinctly remember a company, the managing director rang me up one Christmas, just before Christmas, and he said, "Oh, Rashid, I have to apologize." Now, I'd never spoken to this guy. So I'm going, "What do you need to apologize for?" He said, "I've been getting your emails for 2 years, and I've been hitting delete until I saw this particular one, and the subject line caught my eye." And he said, "I've got a sales team. This is what the problem is, and can you help?" And just off the back of that one call, we did a deal. I went out, we worked with the sales team for that day. Now this is where it gets interesting. So we're up on the North Shore of Sydney. They were down in Campbelltown, which is a good hour and a half, maybe even 2 hour drive, depending on how what the traffic was. Now we were going down to Canberra just for a couple of days, for a holiday. And we would be going past them. And Barbara said, "Why don't we stop? Why don't we go and talk to them again?" I said, no, I don't have it. Why do I want to do that? And she said, no, we're going to stop. So I rang them up and I said, "Listen, we're coming past." And so we stopped, we had a cup of coffee, and they said, "Oh, look, we're going to be going to National Manufacturing Week. We're a bunch of Boilermakers." This was a welding company, multinational. They had welding equipment. And I said, "Oh, look, we have a whole system for helping people with trade shows to get the most out of a trade show." And they said, "Oh, look, we don't even know what to wear. We were thinking of wearing suits." And we're going, "You're Boilermakers. You're not going to be wearing suits, for heaven's sake." And Barbara said, "Oh, look, why don't we go and help them find clothes?" So we're in Canberra and we're going to R.M. Williams and other places like that. And we actually found them clothes, which they bought. They bought a whole series of outfits. Now, what's interesting out of all of this is we then worked with them for another year. It was a good 6-figure deal. And they not only had the best return ever in the history of the company out of that trade show, and the whole 10 years they've been in Australia, it was the most highly profitable month they'd ever had. But they then became the second most profitable subsidiary after Germany due to the sales work that we actually did with them. And I thought, wow, okay, that comes just from being persistent, from putting out content and talking to people. Our other clients might just have conversations every so often. They're on our newsletter list. One day they just ring up and say, "Hey, listen, I need some help to do something." So persistence pays. Now, I talked about the 90-day rule. So the 90-day rule came from a woman called Wendy Evans. And Wendy Evans used to work for Saki & Saki, the advertising company, Intercon Hotels, Thomas Cook Travel. And she's the one who discovered that on day 91, if you hadn't been in contact with that particular person, somebody else came along offering a similar product or service, they would go with that person and they'd forget you. So I had a client. They did a whole bunch of work, 3 or 4 projects for a major government department. But the last project, they, for some reason, felt that they hadn't done something quite, they pissed off the IT director because he wanted something and they hadn't done it. So for 3 years, they didn't contact this guy. And they noticed that he had a work anniversary or whatever, coming up on LinkedIn, so they just sent him a message. And he immediately called back and he said, "Oh, it's fantastic to hear from you. Haven't heard from you in so long. And We've just put out a tender for exactly what you do, but your name isn't on it because we'd completely forgotten about you. Remember, these are guys who love them. Can you put in a response? You've got 2 days. They scrambled, they put in a response, and they got the deal. Now, what's interesting is when I rang this IT director, he said he was so happy with them that he would have spent his own money because of the work that they'd done, had reduced his own stress to such a degree he would have spent his own money. And yet, he had forgotten about them. So that is absolutely the key to keeping in touch with people. So that's about all the content I have for you. So it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention some of the ways that we could work together. And I did say that I would do this. So there are a couple of ways we can do this. One is you can just have a chat with me. We could do a discovery call, which is 30 minutes. It's free, where we talk about what it is that you're facing, the issues that you might be having. And if we can put a plan together, we will. If it's not something that I can do, I have a very wide network of people, and I do give a lot of referrals and connect people with other people. The second discrete service is the client interview gap analysis, value gap analysis, where we will interview a series of your clients. You tell me how many you want to interview. The average is somewhere between 3 and 6 to get a good spread, and you get a full report as well as recording of the interview. So that we do that as a standalone, but we also bundle it in to our bigger programs like the Revenue Growth Intensive. And the Revenue Growth Intensive, I've already covered some of the points where we actually look at who your target market is, how you actually go to market, how you handle your sales calls, the whole enchilada of basically this system over here. Come back. This particular system, the selling, the marketing, and the prospecting, and how you figure out your experience, expertise, and essence, and then determine your message and how you actually get traffic and convert. Come back. If you have a sales team, we obviously offer sales training and one-on-one coaching, because training without coaching ongoing is, frankly, in my opinion, a waste of money. Because statistically, we know that people retain maybe at a pinch 10 or 15% of any training. But the real value comes in the ongoing follow-up and the coaching. So those are ways that we can work together. Now, what I'll say is this. Right now, we're at the present. And as time moves forward, one of two things is going to happen. We can either move forward and say, we're going to grow, or we don't take action, and ultimately we will decline. There is no sitting still. I think there should be an L in there. There's a great woman, there's a woman who wrote a great book called Susan Scott, called Fierce Conversation. It's a really good book to read. And she talks about success and failure happening slowly and then suddenly. And that goes for both success as well as failure. But the interesting thing is, right now you're here. The longer you wait, the bigger the gap becomes until it becomes unsurmountable. So all I would suggest is, regardless if you do anything with us or not, do something. Because you're either growing or you're declining, because clients come, clients go. There is no such thing as standing still. And it can be for no fault of your own that clients go. We've had a number of clients die. I mean, it happens. So you just don't know what the future holds unless you actually take action. And the last thing I would say is, we have a whole bunch of free material. You can scan the code, or you can send me a message, and I will put you on the list. So there's that attract high value. This document over here has been responsible for a significant number of sales. And that is the one that people would turn up. They printed the whole thing out. They put sticky notes in, highlighted things, and they'd already made the decision just on the basis of one document. Close That Deal talks about our system for having sales conversations. So that's it for today. I would thank you for being here. Any comments? I'll just open it up.
Great food for thought there, Rashid. It's a lot of things you know, but need to hear again sometimes, I think.
Look, there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, it's what we do with it.
Yeah, Carnegie still works, eh?
Yep, sure does.
I thought it was a great session too. And yeah, keep reminding to prospect, and you easily forget or let go of something without reconsidering. So they're reflecting on it. They're very good. And systems are everything, whether they're formal or informal. So couldn't agree more.
Thank you. All right, thank you everybody, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Rashid.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Rashid.